Maybe you thought I was kidding when I talked about celebrating diversity in this church. Yeah, let it be a house of peace where both scientists and mystics can abide. Now, most of us here are fairly familiar with the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalists. And if you're not, and we have quite a few visitors today, they are listed in both of our hymnals in the front few pages, and there are also these handy-dandy bookmarks in the pews. And if there's not one in your pew, bug somebody in a nearby pew for one. And our principles are guides for living. They are what our member congregations have covenanted to, and that we mean by promised. We've a promise to affirm and promote them. We care about the worth and dignity of all. We care about justice, equity, and compassion, spiritual growth, and we encourage everyone to search for truth and meaning. We use the democratic process, care about world community, and last but never least, we promise to respect our living planet. But why do we care about those things? What do we use in our searches for truth and meaning? How and why do we work for justice? The answers to those questions are, I believe, on the back of the bookmark. That's a metaphor. Because our sources are quite literally what holds our unique place in the world of ideas and of world religions. I quote, "The living tradition we share draws from many sources." Living is a key word there, as well as the word tradition. Our sources are from our history. They are where we came from. But more importantly, they are what we can use to find out where we are going. In our reading this morning, seminarian Paul Oakley makes a similar point. He says that the sources lead us to specific actions, like loving our neighbors and working for justice. And I agree with him, but I want to take it a step further. Our sources are not just about our history, and they are not just guides for the present, but they are also a list of research materials, as it were. A reference library we can go to when we have the need. When the world or our own lives have changed in ways that we're having trouble understanding. These sources are incredibly rich. There's 6 of them. Every single one has so much to offer. And I want to encourage all of you to take a look at them and to think about them. Some of you may feel yourselves more drawn to one of the sources more than another. And some of them may have little personal meaning to you. That used to be true for me, as a matter of fact. But if you pay a little more attention to those sources that haven't moved you in the past, I think you may be surprised at what you will discover. It is a living tradition, after all. We need to give it ways and room to grow. The first source is direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. What does that mean? Several things, I think. One, probably most obvious, revelation is not sealed. Mystery and wonder are all around us. We need to trust in our own experiences and in our own senses. If we see a rainbow, referencing back to last week, we see a rainbow and we think it is a miracle. Maybe it is. Who's to tell us it's not? Many of us have had in our own individual lives experiences which some would name spiritual. There have been times when a deep realization of an important truth has left us in awe and in wonder. It is a knowing that not everything can be understood by the simply rational. It is a sense that there really are forces that both create and uphold life, even if they are forces beyond our understanding. This direct experience could be a sense of having a personal connection to God, but it doesn't have to be exclusively theistic. One of our members, who defines himself as a humanist, spoke here a few years ago about a feeling he had when he visited the Smithsonian museums in Washington, D.C. And the government was not shut down that week, thankfully. And he's sitting at a moment there when it hit him. When he realized that everything in those fabulous museums in some ways belonged to him. He was a part of something much larger than himself. We should never discount our own experience of the world around us. And this first source of ours reminds us to think, see, and feel for ourselves. Doesn't mean we will always be right, but we should not substitute someone else's judgment about what is right or good for our own. And if we aren't sure, we can check the other sources. Isn't that convenient? The second source is words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. This is where we could say, what would Jesus do? Who are your heroes? Who has inspired you in your life? It could be somebody famous, but it could be just someone you know, perhaps someone in your family, a neighbor, a friend. Many members of this particular church community have inspired me with both their words and deeds. People like Bev Dally, Cal Hansen, Roy Hassel, Evelyn Bertelson. Oh, and there's Roxanne Taylor up there, too. And Doris Lang. They're awesome role models, I think. Don't y'all think that, too?
Amen.
Amen. Hey, thank you. But this source also leads us to look at our heroes and at who they are or were, as well as what they did. Did they confront evil with justice, as well as with compassion and love? No one is perfect, but those who would lead us to hate others are not those we should try to model ourselves after. Not in this source. Martin Luther King is one of my inspirations, as is Gandhi, both of whom held love very strongly as their guiding force. And my namesake, Mother Theresa, is not a bad role model either. Although I do not share her Catholic theology. second source is a place we can go to discover more effective ways to bring about a more just world. The third source, wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. This source is incredibly varied. The religions of the world are many and diverse. But what do they have to teach us? What spiritual practice from those other traditions can give our lives, our own lives, more meaning? Maybe it's yoga, Buddhist meditation practice, the Hindu concept of namaste, which is a recognition of the divine in you and the divine in all of us. The daily prayers of Islam. Those are only a few of the places that we can go for help in our spiritual and ethical lives. This source is a place waiting for discovery. Most of us have not looked too closely at what the different world religions might have to offer us. The fourth source is Jewish and Christian teachings, which calls us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Now, this source is our immediate history and heritage. Unitarian Universalism arose from Christianity, just as Jesus was clearly a follower of the Jewish faith. This history speaks very strongly to those of us who attended exclusively Christian churches in the past and loved the many inspiring messages and stories contained in both the Jewish and Christian scriptures. One point that bears repeating: we are still a Christian faith. We're just not exclusively Christian anymore. Just like we're not exclusively humanist, or exclusively agnostic, or exclusively pagan. We are a diverse faith. But there is so much to learn from the study of the Bible, and inspiration is everywhere in the parables of Jesus and the stories of the Hebrew prophets. We should not turn away from that source because of perhaps a painful past in a Christian tradition. Our fifth source is humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. And they warn us against the idolatries of the mind and spirit. And this is the source that I think helps keep us honest. Whatever we believe and do must make some sense. It's, it's got to make some sense in the real world, the one, the real world, the one around us. And yeah, we can have understandings of mystery that are well beyond the realm of the scientific method. I mean, the meaning we draw from a rainbow. I said that earlier. But it's very dangerous ground to rely on something that is in direct contradiction to what science and reason tell us. Yes. Angels might fly. They fly. The harp plays, the angels sing. But we need to remember that that's in our imaginations. Humans are subject to gravity. And there's not a heaven up in the clouds because, this planet is in a huge universe. Where would that heaven be? So, there's ancient understandings that are in the historical, Bible. And, the Bible might say one thing. But if science tells us that the world is quite a bit older than 6,000 years, I'm going with science. Because science and religion should never be in conflict. They should both of them should be about increasing our understanding of the universe and of our place in it. And that, of course, brings us to our sixth source, the last official written one, which is spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. How can we not live in harmony with nature when we are part of it? Now, this is a favorite source for many of us who have come to Unitarian Universalism from pagan traditions and practices. Our environmental activists absolutely love it. There are seasons to our lives, just as there are seasons in the year. The need for harmony with nature is also in the sacred writings of other faith traditions, including Judaism and Christianity. And sometimes we just need to go up on a mountain and watch the sunrise. Sometimes we need the peace that can come from sitting by a river or from watching a flock of birds fly by. Those are our 6 official sources. Places where we can go for inspiration. Places where we can go for comfort. Is anything left out? What would you add to this list? It's not written in stone, after all. We can add things to it. Just as we can rewrite our 7 principles anytime we want. There's actually a democratic process established to do that at our national assemblies. And individual congregations can submit proposals to be considered. And actually, a couple of years ago, there was a proposal to revise all of the wording for our 6 sources. It didn't pass, but it could have. There was a lot of discussion. One source I might add, because it's in there sort of, but not specifically, would be something about the arts, about music, poetry, those things that move you, that don't necessarily have words, or words that are not linear in any sense. Beauty and meaning both come often from artistic creativity. It generates life. It's worth thinking about adding them more specifically to our list of reference material. And just because we have 6 sources, just as we're not exclusively one historical faith tradition, our sources are not exclusive either. You can go other places, The whole world is a library. But our sources are our main books in that reference library. They aren't just history, and they aren't just an action plan, as our reading suggested. Paul Oakley in that said, "We irrigate the fields not by worshiping the water, but by doing something with the water." Now he's right about that. But we also need to go back and drink from the wells that water comes from. We need to drink again and again, because living, the way we try to live our lives, with justice, mercy, compassion, living is thirsty work. Yeah? Thirsty work. And we know about thirsty work in this desert area. May we never be afraid to drink from those many wells, those wells that can offer us the wisdom and the strength to carry on. May it be so.